My name's Hazem Gaber, and today we're going to talk about for and for each statements. So, um, in programming, we can use the for statement. Uh, it's pretty useful when we're iterating, um, and we want to do something a certain number of times. So we have our condition, just like our while, then we do something. But uh, it typically involves a variable, and we can increment the variable in our do something part of it. So we got three things. One is the starting. So in this case, we've created a variable called I, and we started at 0, and then we have our condition. So I is less than 5, and then I plus plus, which means add 1 to it. So this is going to start I is 0. It's going to do something, and then it's going to add 1 to it, and it's going to come back, and it's going to say, oh, well, 1 is less than 5. So do it again. So do it again, and then add 1, and we're going to get 2. And then, so I is 2. 2 is less than 5. Until we get to 5. Once I is 5, this will stop. So when you, so this will run 5 times. So when you do this, you have to think about, you can start I, for example, as 1. So you could have written I equals 1, and then I is less than 6. Or you could have written it as I equals 1,000 or whatever. You gotta also think about, if you wrote I is equal to 1, I is less than or equal to 6. So this will run 6 times instead of 5. So think about what you want to do here. Um, you can increment the value of I in the do something. And you might want to do that, for example, if you want to have uh, this for loop end prematurely. So, so an example is, going back to my tank of water. We have we have a tank of water and a pump, and we want to add 1,000 liters. So we might do for I equals to 0, I is less than 1,000, I plus plus, add 1 liter of water. So this will just run, but I might not want to do that. I might say, hey, let's measure the water. So we might not want to start at 0. We can say for I equals start volume. I is less than 1,000. Add 1 liter. So now, let's say our starting volume is 500 liters, then we're only going to add 500 more liters, not 1,000. Or we might say, hey, if it's winter time, um, then we want to add less water. We might want to add 800 liters. We can, or if there's a leak in the tank, so we can put an if statement here. Anyway, sometimes the best way to end these is with a end statement. So we might say f leak equals true, then just write end. So end can be used to end any of these cyclical statements. And then we have the for each, which is just like for, but this is normally um, iterated as an array. So usually the condition is array as value, and the way that it works is going back to our earlier presentation. Say I have an array and I want to get the average. So let's say I got some temperatures, 2, and I got 4, 8, 3, 7. So I want to know the average of these 4 numbers. And I call this array, just call it array. So what I can do is I can write a for each statement. So I'm going to first declare a variable. I'm going to call it average. And we're just going to give it the value 0. And then we're going to write for actually we're going to do let's go back here. I'm going to do two things. I'm going to do two variables. I'm going to do first one, I'm going to call it quantity. And it's going to be equal to 0. And the second one, I'm going to call it total. And it's going to be equal to 0. And the third one is average. So if I add all these numbers up, 8 is 12, 22. So the total is 22. And there's 4 numbers. So 22 divided by 4 is 5.25. If that makes sense. So we're gonna create, but what if we had like 10,000 numbers? How could we get the average? We wouldn't do the math, so we just do for each. So we've created these variables and we do for each array as value. Now get this. This code is going to cycle through every value in the array. So first cycle, so now we can use this variable. So these variables we've declared outside of our loop, so they're basically permanent. Their value doesn't change when they're in the loop. Or in other words, they continue to exist after the loop is over. Whereas this value variable or any variable we create in the loop only exists in the loop. What happens in the loop stays in the loop. So the first time the loop runs, the value of value is 4, which is the first value in the array. And the second time it's 8, and the third time it's 3, and the fourth time it's 7. So I might write what am I gonna write here? So let's just erase that. We're gonna do total equals total plus value. So remember, total is 0 because we created this variable and we said it's 0. So total here is 0 and value is 4, so our total is 4. And then quantity, we're going to just do plus plus. So our quantity is 1. And then this will run again a second time. So now it says, well, total again. So now our total was 4. So 4 plus our new value, which is 8, is 12, and our quantity is 2. And then it'll run a third time. So our total is 12 plus the new value, which is 3. So it's 15, and then it's 22, and our total quantity is 4. So this will run 4 times because the array has 4 uh, units in it, but it could run, 1,000 times or 1,000,000 times. And then at the end, we do our calculation. So we do average equals total divided by quantity. Now, you can say, well, we could put this formula in here. We could have done that, and we would still end up with the same average because after the 4th iteration, we would have calculated the correct average, and since we declared the variable outside of the loop, it will still be valid. But we don't want to do that because that would mean the computer would unnecessarily calculate this 3 times. We only need to calculate the average at the end. So it's a bad idea. We're trying to, one of the goals of writing code is writing efficient code. And so if our array was 1,000,000 lines long, then we'd have to calculate this 1,000,000 times. Any questions? Please leave a